When was she born?
Jean was my first born.
Jean was the
child.
first? Jean was the first? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jean was born in April 1951. And she was the first. Okay, we lived with my mom and dad after we got married for the first, until Jean was born. And when Jean was 10 months old, we moved out by ourselves. And she was always quiet, always very helpful, always right under my feet. And from the time that her brothers were born, she was like Maddie is now. She would help take care of them. And her and Bill were only a year and a half apart, so they were always very close. All through their life, they were close to each other. I don't think Jean and Bill ever had a quarrel between them. And but Jean grew up in the family with 4 brothers younger than her, and always being a caretaker, as I was, always helping one of the others. And when she grew up, she helped me a lot because of the other boys both having something wrong with them. She was there when Bill got struck by the lightning. She was with him. She'd come running up to the house and got us to come to, so we knew what happened. And I don't know. When I have to talk to something like this, I can't think like I do when I'm just rattling on, talking to you about things myself, you know. I can't think of what I want to say if I got to think about it. My brain just likes to go wild by itself.
Husband?
Well, she grew up, and after she grew up, she married young.
Who was her first husband?
And her first husband was Harold Kaplinger, and they went to church together. They went together the junior, senior year at school, and after school they got married. But it wasn't long afterwards they found out that it wasn't what God had planned for either one of them, so they got a divorce. They had no children, and she was alone for almost over 2 years. And during that time, she went out with others a few times, but not anyone steady until Al Obazinski. And her husband was the type that after the marriage, he still would always keep coming over, trying to win her back, I guess you would say.
Wait, her first husband?
Yeah, and he would, a lot of times she'd go someplace, and all of a sudden he'd show up at the same place on purpose and try to get her to take him back. But, so eventually, once she started going with Al was a karate teacher at the time, and I think that kind of stopped him from tormenting Jean so much, because he knew that he had to leave her alone because she'd already found someone else who could keep him away from her. And so eventually they married, and then they had 4 sons: Bill, Mark, Ken, Bill, Mark, Peter, and Allie. And she lived her life for her sons. She'd give anything for any of them, but she also helped many, many other people. They had more than 1,000 karate. She did not like karate at first because people were hurting each other. She didn't understand it. But then after the years went by, and her husband kept teaching, and her son started learning it, when her youngest son, Alan, was 6 months old, she decided that she was going to learn it because her boys were taking karate 3 times a week, and she could be with them that way, and she decided to start doing it herself. So she joined the karate school then, and during the time they, I'd say, had more than 1,000 students over the years that they taught the karate, and she eventually taught the white to yellow belts herself. And she worked 3 different jobs during her lifetime, 3 or 4 different places. She worked at Lakeland College, and she worked at Mark's. And she always helped others, and she always went to church. When her children were small, she went to the little church across the street from where we lived. And she, when the children were born, her and Al took them to church until they were teenagers. And at the little church across the road on Hill Road, the Community Christian Church that they went to, it was told once that my daughter was such a good baker, making cookies and pies and things for the church whenever they needed them. And they used to tease her that once she married, or once she had children of her own to bring to the church, that they would probably all be chubby because of all her good baking qualities and the cookies that she made. They said they could see them all sitting in a row, all 3, 4 little chubby ones sitting there in the chair. And it was like funny at the church at that time. I mean, and her and Harold, when they did marry, her first husband, they bought a chalice for the church. That's the cup that everyone passes and drinks the wine from, or the juice from, in remembrance of God, of Jesus. In remembrance of Jesus, you drink from the cup. And that chalice today, in 2014, is still at the Community Christian Church on Hale Road in Painesville, and the people still use it today. I was there before Jane died. For some reason, about 3 months before, when she knew she had the cancer, she wanted me to go back to church with her over there. So the 2 of us went. And we noticed the chalice was still there, and we were told that they still have it, they still use it. And it was kind of different that she thought about going back to that church one more time before she left us. And another thing she did was she always, when she baked those pies and cakes, she always said it was easier to make 6 instead of 1, because having all the children like she did, 1 or 2 pies didn't do it, and one would want one kind, another wanted another kind. So she always was in the habit of baking a lot. As the boys got older, of course, they didn't eat as much pies and cakes. So if she made it, she still would make a large amount like that. And if she had extras, of course, she brought one over here to her mom, and she would stop on Hill Road and drop one off to Mrs. Nichols, or to Mrs. Kelsey, Ruth Kelsey, and offer some to Mrs. Nichols and Mrs. Music. And she was always like that. She would always give things to people, and she was noted for her generosity. Just the other day here in 214, she's been gone 11 years, but I was at the restaurant one day, at the Perry restaurant, and these 2 old men were in there talking, and my grandson, which would have been Jean's son, 3rd son, Peter, just had the set of triplets. And the one older man at the table down from me lives across the street from Peter on Hill Road. And so I said to him, had he seen the triplets yet? And he said, yes, he had been over. And he said that that's one of the nicest families that I know and that could ever be. And he said, you know, I don't know how long it's been, but I know I remember your daughter. I'll always remember your daughter, because there were times when at Christmas time and holidays I'd go out to get my mail, and when I opened my mailbox there'd be a box of cookies or a box of something sweet for us from your daughter across the street. That she was always like that. She never had time to have much to stand and talk because she had the children, but she always thought about others. That's her main thing in life. And during the karate, she always, everybody had to have uniforms. And of course they never fit. Some had to be shortened, and all of them had to have the patches sewed on. And I cannot tell you how many hundreds of patches she put on everyone's uniforms for them before she gave them to them, and how many times she shortened pants for children whose parents didn't know how to do it, and appreciated the fact that she would make sure that it was short enough so that the boy could walk without walking on his pant legs. She was just always a person that helped others. She never worried about what she had for herself. She only had one permanent wave in her hair in her lifetime. She cut her own hair most of the time. Once in a while she'd go to the beauty shop and let them cut the top and the sides for her. But she had long, fluffy, beautiful hair. And we used to tease her about being Jeannie. A song in my day, Jeannie with the light brown hair, it fit her perfectly. That she looked like Jeannie with the light brown hair. This is just the things that I think about when I think about her, and what her life was like. She was always happy, and definitely her family was everything to her. And she always took particular care of her brothers. Now Bill was didn't know himself that he was going to go blind by the time he was 40. He had retinitis pigmentosa, and he would have to go to, that meant that he was blind at night by the time he was about 15 years old. And I always told him that everybody can't see in the dark, Bill. None of us can see in the dark. It's dark outside. And she would go along with it, and she would always make sure that if they were out in the dark, that she walked beside Bill, and so he didn't run into things. And when they would get on the school bus in the mornings, it's dark in the morning at 7:30, 8 o'clock, if they were to get on the buses to go from Hale Road to Riverside and to the different schools for different out things that they had in the evening. She always would walk down, she told me she would walk down in the bus until she'd seen an empty seat on the end, and then she would just poke him on the arm so he knew he could sit there. And then she'd go try to find a seat for herself. Because one time they got on the bus, and Bill went to sit down, and he almost sat down on somebody, and everyone laughed, made fun of him and nobody knew. The children didn't know. Bill himself did not know he was losing his vision. But we did, but we were told by the doctors not to tell him right away, because it would make him kind of give up his freedoms and things. In the early teens, you are susceptible a lot to how the other kids feel about you. So Bill struggled on until his graduation, actually, just before when he was going to graduate, when he was 18. We finally told him what he had, what the name of his blindness was, and I'm sure in between he knew he was different because or just didn't see as well as the rest, but he hadn't known until then that he would be blind during his lifetime. And Jean always helped him through that. Then besides that, Her brother Ken was always very thin. I don't think he weighed over 120 pounds in his whole lifetime. He could eat ice cream, anything he wanted, anytime he wanted, and he couldn't gain any weight because all his strength went to fight the cystic fibrosis that was going on in his lungs his whole lifetime from the time he was born. And she always looked out for him. She made sure that he was okay and stuck up for him in different situations. And she, when he was older, I'll just say she made special clothes for him because he had difficulty sitting and everything because he was so thin, his tailbone would hurt at the end of the day. And Jean had a lot to do with helping him for several years also. She never did his treatments and things because Mom did his treatments and Mom got his mist tent ready every night and took care of that. Took care of his physical problems, but she always made sure that she helped him otherwise. Made him some of his favorite things. And so as I can say, my daughter, from the time she was born on, she always took care of someone else. I always had a lot of feeling for anybody that had anything else wrong with them. When other people would make fun of somebody, she would try to help that